So I wish you all a very good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Um, Welcome to our panel discussion on reckoning, and justice. And there's the aspect which will be, in film. And I'm sort of jumping in for our moderator who has unfortunately a sick baby, but I hope not too sick. And so there's going to be an improvisational aspect to this panel discussion. I guess we'll start off by introducing our panelists. We have, let me see, I'm reading this off. We have Sophie Holzberger, and Sophie is, she's currently a PhD candidate at the Martin Scorsese Department of Cinema Studies in New York, examining the politics of collaboration in feminist film. And the film that we're going to see is not a film of Sophie's, but she's sort of going to introduce us to that and also introduce us to our panelist, Siegbert Ott, who has a very special connection to this film. And I'll let Sophie talk about that. And Jordan Awori, who is who's a filmmaker and living, as far as I've understood, please correct me if I'm wrong, living in Frankfurt. And Jordan's emphasis in film is also on a feminist aspect of, correct me if I'm wrong, I love to be corrected, a feminist aspect of life and also life in as between cultures.
So I'm more an interdisciplinary artist. So films are part of the mediums I use. And I guess what is important in my work is more on belonging. So yes, the cross-cultural aspect of it is a big part of my world, coming from Kenya and then living in Germany the last 5 years and finding this angle of where does one belong? Is belonging really necessary? Anyway, I can rant for hours.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up. Why don't we just sort of begin with a presentation? You can present yourselves, you can present your work, you can present one another. So could you begin?
Of course. Give me 1 second to start the screen sharing here. So, are you all seeing my screen? Wonderful. So hello, everyone. I am beyond honored to be here with you today to introduce the film you were all able to see over the course of this week online, the 1995 film production, The Snake in My Bed, Die Schlange in meinem Bett. And thank you so much to the conference organizers and Rosemary and Emily in particular for making this possible. It was a lot of work to make these files available to stream, and I truly appreciate your patience and support with making this happen. For all of you who didn't have a chance to see the film so far, both language versions will be available until Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And The Snake in My Bed is a truly remarkable film in many ways. And what I want to do today is quickly introduce the film and filmmaker Omar Diego to give you some of the historical production and distribution context. But most importantly, it is my pleasure today to introduce our very special guest, Zigbet Ozimat, protagonist of the film, and in some way its main subject and topic, son of the filmmaker and her close collaborator. Thank you so much for making the time and being here with us today, Ziggy. And also thank you for making these files available to us, because as we will talk about, hopefully they're from your private collection, which is part of the mess that we're in here. So Ziggy and I will be in conversation over his experience with the film and the history it had after I'm giving you some of the Rahmen or Eckdaten, as we say in German. Ziggy, do you want to say something before I dive into all of this?
Sure. Well, my mom made the film, subjects being more of myself, I guess. Well, the intended audience is me. Everyone else gets to benefit from that. I guess we'll go into the conversation more in depth when we get to it. But yeah, I'm honored that my mom took the time, went through the experiences, decided to not blog, but log her experiences, write about her experiences, and then create a script and produce a film about those experiences that we get to talk about. So, yeah.
All right. So we're gonna, hopefully hear more from you in about 10 minutes, I would say. That's a very short introduction I wrote.
Yeah.
So you're seeing it on the slide. Omar Diego's feature, The Snake in My Bed, starts at the duck pond. Over images of sunbeams breaking in the water, her voice recounts the tale of Princess Onwero, whose life choices are bound up with the water, needing to decide if she joins her husband in returning to the sea or finding her way back to her family. Over the next 86 minutes, the film unfolds a quest for bridging the ocean between Nigeria and Germany in shape of an autofictional rendering of Diego's own biography. So in what the director calls an abstract documentary, the film tells the story of her application for her son's citizenship after the white German father denies his parenthood. Addressing her son in the voiceover, it's a bit funny having you in the audience and keep referring to her son. But addressing Ziggy in the voiceover that she reads herself in the English language version, she acts as his griot, giving him the story of his origin as a gift in form of a film. And I'm quoting Omar here, as if the film is a letter he can read someday when he's old enough to take in the story of his troubled origins. On the filmmaking process, she recalls, I made the snake in my bed as I would any of my paintings, an abstract vomit from the very depth of my soul. Omar Diego understands herself first and foremost as a fine artist whose move into filmmaking has its root in journalism in Nigeria in the 1970s, and her experience with press censorship working at Radio Nigeria Lagos and the Nigerian Television Authority Lagos. Before realizing The Snake in My Bed, with the financial support of Kleines Fernsehspiel at ZDF, she was approached by a filmmaker in Germany who wanted to make a film about her biography. She remembers her strong reaction to that proposal. If this story will be told, I'm telling it myself, because things can get lost or misunderstood in the translation. It was the very idea of UCLA saying, Black people, minorities, come tell your stories yourself. The concept of truthfulness, central to Diego's approach to filmmaking, emerges in tension with the nation state in the context of The Snake in My Bed. Quoting her again, I got the sponsoring from Germany, but the trouble I was getting was also from Germany. The fairy tale that frames the story and relationship of image and sound, which meanders from an illustrative approach to ethnographic shots of landscapes, animals, and light caught in the lens, were thereby also decisions made to make sure the story would be told the way she wanted it to. She attributes this approach to the radical emancipatory politics of the LA Rebellion, which she joined when she was admitted as the first African woman in the UCLA film program in the late 1970s. While at UCLA, she made 3 shots on 3 different formats. Her Project 1, Ubaledu, on 8mm, 1980, which is considered lost. African Women on 16mm, that was included on the DVD release of the LA Rebellion Project, and the story of a wrestling match on 3/4-inch video from 1982 that I have not been able to see so far. To Oma Diego, The Snake in My Bed was successful in that regard of the UCLA rebellion spirit that it was accepted and did not offend anybody, end of quote. The collaboration with public television to her was one of enabling power. Claudia Tronje, who's a very long-time producer at Kleines Fernsehspiel and who was also her producer at ZDF, provided her with everything she needed and did not interfere in the creative process. The film was made in 1992 and took place years after the event it narrates, which has important consequences, obviously, for the film. So the film alternates between a present-day narration and retrospective accounts in interview sequences with family and friends that are accompanied by images that serve illustrative purposes or stand in traditions of ethnographic filmmaking. Still seeing my slides, by the way, just checking in. Good, okay. We see an anonymous sequence of a wedding, Diego getting her hair braided alongside many car and train rides that are montaged to the voiceover reporting on the journeys between Nigeria and Germany. To Diego, the griot narration supports the blurred sense of time and helps to, quote, tell a story in the present, but of something that happened in the past. The relationship between historical and present time shapes the film also in its reference to Nigerian colonial history. Over images of white tourists arriving in boats at a Nigerian beach, the voiceover recounts the interruptions of generational reproduction through British colonial rule, in which the Nigerian wives and children of white officials were left legally unprotected after the men's passing. Even though the brief role that Germany played in Nigeria's colonial history in 1889 remains unmentioned, the struggle over getting West German citizens' rights for her child points to colonial regulations of reproduction and the larger role of the German Empire in that global process of colonization. Another very important aesthetic choice the film is making to render these conditions of post-colonial rupture visible are the images of bodies of water. And we see the montage in which we travel from Nigeria to Germany through water images in the background. So the duck pond in Germany that we saw in the first slide is cut against the crashing waves at the beach in Lagos, drawing on a cinematic tradition of oceanic images to speak truth to power or hint at the power of revolution through the movement of oceans in Black women's filmmaking. And I am thinking here, right? So here we have the last sequence of The Snake in My Bed. And I'm thinking here, for example, of the role of the ocean in Sarah Maldoror's 1972 Sambizanga, or Zainabu Irene Davis's 1999 Compensation, which, by the way, is celebrating its restoration release this weekend in New York. So this was, special to find out while I was preparing this presentation. After its initial broadcast on German public television, the film did not reach a wide audience. So in the 2010s, a copy became part of the UCLA Film and Television Archive in the context of the LA Rebellion Project. Instead of a narrative of scarcity that could follow from this, I want to highlight the continuity of the film's presence in a very specific history of feminist film programming in Germany, which also is the story of how I got to learn about the film. So 1973 marks the year of a pivotal event in German feminist film history, the so-called First International Women's Film Seminar, considered to be one of the very first European feminist film festivals that was screening films such as Madeleine Anderson's I Am Somebody, next to films from the early Women Make Movies catalog, and collective productions from all over Europe. This event was revisited in 1997 under the title The Point is to Change It, Film Festivals Feminism. And a section of the 1997 festival is titled No Woman's Land. So we're zooming in, right? So we are still assuming that this program, so this section of the festival in 1997, is the first explicit festival section that focuses on feminist filmmakers of color working in Germany, or in the German context. So next to Zerat Bayrakarasu's beautiful documentary, Ekmek Parasi, Money for Bread, The Snake in My Bed is the only feature-length film in this section. In 2023, another festival that I was a co-organizer of, Feminist Elsewheres, revisited both events and programmed the first public screening of The Snake in My Bed in Germany that we are aware of since the 1990s. Ziggy joined us for that event in Berlin as well. And not even a month later, some wonderful colleagues, Bettina Ellerkamp and Merle Kröger, hosted a very large and impressive event on the history of the Kleines Fernsehspiel, The Home and the Movie, and invited Oma to Berlin. And a recording of that conversation, which is a really beautiful conversation, is available on YouTube. To end, I just want to have our attention for 1 second with the material conditions in which many feminist films, but to a much larger degree, the film heritage of feminist filmmakers of colors, are preserved. As you saw in the note, we attached for both of the versions of the film. None of the versions is an appropriate digitized copy, so the English language version's visual quality is bad, only serving as an exemplary idea of the film, and by no means living up to the actual color palette and beautiful framing of the original 16mm copy. And whereas the resolution and colors of the German language version are much closer to the original material, here we lose Oma's own voice to an actress that was dubbing the film for television broadcast, and of whose choice Oma was not very happy with. The choice which file to watch is thereby always a compromise, mostly due to the fact that the UCLA archive has not produced a high-resolution digitized file of the film and has a high-quality control standard for lending 16mm material to institutions, which is great for the sustainable archiving of an original print, but obviously makes screening and/or teaching the film much more complicated. When we're talking about preserving minoritarian and specifically Afro-German histories, the technical realities of film preservation are part of that political project. No? So how can we make sure that films like Oma's get preserved and find a home in a wonderful archive like the UCLA Film and Television Archive, while also being able to circulate and be shown again? So this short input hopefully gives you a small framework for the film's production and some of the questions for its future. And I would actually like to hand over the digital mic to you now, Ziggy. And to get us started, I would love to hear about your screening experiences with the film. So for a while, you have collaborated with your mother to help get the film back into circulation. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share some of these experiences with us.
Sure. So I suppose I get the honor and privilege now of taking part in these conferences, such events, more so because of my mom's health. Luckily, she was able to make it, as you said, to the Berlin screening, but for other reasons, she could make it to this one and also the future planned screening this year. So, I mean, I get the honor of taking over for her. From a screening perspective, there was a screening at the Hammer Theater in Los Angeles quite a while ago, which I also did a presentation on. Was very refreshing. First step into this field of speaking, but also very refreshing, very enlightening, also able to say my own experiences from the film as the target audience. Coming to your event in 23 was also good, very refreshing, expanding upon that and also taking part now in this event. So I thank you again for inviting me. Thank you all for setting this up. From my perspective, I mean, the film for me is more of a personal response, how to take personal responsibility, personal accountability. Because in my situation, as you may have seen, as the audience may have seen, my father didn't. So now learning about that, it's not that it's necessarily okay. People can be bad, people can be cruel, but more so as, hey, people tend to avoid taking their personal responsibility till they're pushed into that position. In Germany at the time, there was no accountability for German men who did go and have their experiences overseas or elsewhere. So in my case, what also kind of made the basis of the film is that, hey, a couple people, my mom most especially for me, stood up and said, hey, this is unacceptable. You can't just come, have fun, and leave. You have to take responsibility for what you created, who you created, and also your following actions thereof. So, I mean, in that you can get multiple different messages. Many people have different feelings. Again, art is interpretive, so many people have many different feelings about the film, which they're very welcome to have. And from my perspective, it's okay, well, how do I continue to take personal responsibility and not wind up like someone like my father? Not that he was bad, or, I mean, in my situation, he wasn't the best, but not like he was a bad person in general. I don't know him. So yeah, that's my basis of the topic. As far as imaging goes, she did take my mom. She did take a lot of time to really work with ZDF, kleines Fernsehspiel, and the and also be able to make content that at the time would have been more taboo, because of course you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, so you're not going to say, oh, this is bad, this is a bad situation, we have to change it. You're going to say, well, this is my experience, how do I retell it without biting the hand that feeds me? Yeah.
I'm very interested in this connection of accountability you're making between what it means to travel with a film like this in relationship to the lack of accountability, you're seeing portrayed in the film or also in your own biography. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you can share a bit with us how, and that's maybe again, your perspective onto this, obviously, but how the film was perceived in these different screenings that you've attended with it. And yeah, maybe that's the question for now.
Perception, from the questions I've fielded, some perceive it as speaking to a very feminist oriented movement, which is, yeah, it does speak to a very feminist oriented movement in that women need their basic rights and men have basic rights. Women just need to be honored for those basic rights that men get the privilege of. So from that perspective, I've heard many questions coming from that. Hey, this is the message I got from the film. Thank you for building that narrative, because again, art is interpretive. You get that, okay, well, you know what? Women do experience disadvantages. This is fact. This isn't even a discussion anymore. It's just what it is. So going to that, women experiencing this film, their questions are targeted, okay, well, how do we now push society where we get more of a voice, where we get more respect, where we can now start taking personal accountability as well, and move the conversation into the future. On the other side, there's also the aspect of the the artistic aspect of it, how the scenery connects to nature, how it connects, hey, this scenery here in Germany and the scenery in Nigeria is very similar. Yes, two different parts of the world, but you have lovely water features here in Germany. You have lovely water features in Nigeria. You have lovely culture here in Germany that's unique. You have lovely culture in Nigeria that's very unique, and even more unique because you have various different diaspora in Nigeria. So you get the correlation there, and you get more questions also from that aspect. Hey, how do we culturally not how do we culturally understand each other better? Because what passes here in Germany or in the United States or in other Western countries doesn't really pass the same in African countries, and we'll also see doesn't really pass in Asian countries and other countries as well. So it's also understanding that perspective. Hey, okay, in Nigeria, for instance, the Igbos, which my mom is Igbo, I'm Igbo. Um, it allows, okay, it allows men and women to also expand upon their families. It's not as if polyamory is a thing, but it's understanding, okay, how do I expand my family? Well, okay, I'm going to, as not myself, but a man is going to find a wife. Okay, that wife does this aspect, then he'll find another wife and she does that aspect. But that's all right in that culture, which is also not really all right here in Western culture because we're all monogamous. We all expect that monogamy. So that's also a target that really opens up the mind, really makes people think, okay, well, we understand this aspect, but we also respect your aspect. So yeah, I could keep on going, but let me move the questions on.
I mean, just what you're saying is also one of the very interesting legal aspects of the film, right? But I'm seeing
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would like to ask Jordan to present her work and her film because there are going to be some aspects which are similar and there are going to be some aspects which are very different. And I would like to really see and hear from Jordan, and then we can get more into the discussion.
That sounds great.
Yeah, like everything you were saying, Tiggy, like my film, the connections, but I don't want to talk about the film first. I think, and that's how I approach all my art. Maybe it's best we show it first, and then I can go down the rabbit hole of what inspired me, and then we can continue the conversation, I guess.
Okay, are we ready to show the film? Yes, we seem to be.
There is no sound.
That is also not the film.
Yeah, I had it and skipped it. 1 second, I'll be there. Let's see. Let me see. Okay. Okay, let's see.
What are
Okay.
you searching for?
Can you see the screen now? Or no? No. Okay, let's
Yes,
see.
we can see this.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. Let's see. Here we go.
Okay, and is there sound? Or is this with no sound?
Comes from every direction. vinapanda mikononi mwangu. Pulls at the base of my stomach. Mabwawa ya vyota, mabwawa ya vyota, my stomach. Pulse rising heat in my temple. Pigo watoto, hadi vyangu. Pigo watoto, hadi vyangu. Feeling zu Hause. Zu Hause. Feeling.
Thank you. Jordan, can you open your mic? Because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and then we're going to sort of open up for everybody. One thing that jumps out at me when I see this is the concept of time being nonlinear, but that there's a simultaneity of experiences that were actually not simultaneous. Is that the way you experience your memories as a simultaneous, nonlinear concept of time?
I think so, but it's also this lack of linearity, if that's even a term, also connects with like my own mother's memories and experiences, and then also my grandmother. So for the last couple of years, I have been playing with this idea of really I am who I am because my mother is who she is, because my grandmother is who they, and this connection of things is so interesting because I went through all my mother's albums when she studied in the States, when she was my age, when she was younger. And some of the images, I kid you not, you would think it's me right now in Germany. And this, I don't know, this vagueness of time just makes it, I don't know, makes time such a ambiguous thing for me. Also, it's very interesting, some of the experiences I have now, having only lived here for 5 years. So I sometimes say it's like I'm a child in a new culture. I connected so much to when I was like a teenager in Kenya and learning how you learn your friends, so time is really not linear, and I enjoy playing with that. I enjoy playing with the layers of who I am, who I could be, what came before me. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's a lot of layering, which I do with my collages and which I do with my films. Yeah.
I also noticed that here in this collage, there's crossing the water,
Mm.
just like in Omar's film,
Mm.
there's crossing the water. So just to sort of open it up for all of you, what is crossing the water? What is distance for you?
I think for me, what's interesting, when I made this film very recently. It was in November, and I just spent a month in Kenya. And it was just, and I think it's also after the third year of living here, these questions of like home and belonging were constantly in my head. And when I went back home, or when I was in Kenya, it's just interesting to see aspects of Germany there. And then I come here and it's interesting to see similarities. Like, I don't know, this world is not as divided as people are forcing it to be sometimes. And it's interesting. There's something you said about this correlation of scenery. And I wanted to really bring it out in my work. This idea of Kenya is not this like foreign jungle place, and like now Frankfurt is like this modern city. It's like you can find a lot of correlation, and I love that so much. I love the idea of sometimes I can be lost in a section of Nairobi and I look up and I'm like, well, this was me a month ago when I was looking up in Frankfurt, and vice versa. And I just wish people had the capacity to look at the world like it's just one big ball and we all live in it, and could just find the little strings that connect it. Yeah.
Siggy, what is it for you? Distance and time.
From my perspective, I mean, we're ever connected, and we're a big world, but with technology, we're interconnected. We're a heartbeat away. I mean, I'm in Duisburg. You guys are in the east coast of the United States. Jordan is in Frankfurt. My mom is in California, and we can pick up our devices anytime and talk to each other, communicate, which we weren't able to do back, at least in my mom's times. It was a phone call and mail. What do you mean email? Who has money for that? But yeah, you write a letter.
Well, technically, mail is still a thing in Germany.
Yeah, the fax is also a thing in Germany.
Yeah.
It's wild. But yeah, you in my mom's time, you'd write someone a letter, or you'd pick up a phone and call someone. Now we're having a Zoom conference discussing, and we can take virtual tours of anywhere in the world, and and it looks so similar. I mean, even here, geopolitically, we're more connected. We learn about each other's cultures a lot more. You're saying, even with current events, oh, someone in Kiev, for instance, is very European, just like someone in Germany. So yeah, so it's African continent has many, many countries in it, with many, many different cultures, more cultures than we'd even have here in Europe. And somehow we all make it work. We have our own problems, but we make it work. So the interconnectivity is just ever more present, and it's getting stronger and stronger. Even, yeah, even we're all feeling what's going on stateside too. So
Could I add one more thing to what you were saying? I think for me, as much as also sometimes celebrating the similarities, there's also beauty in the differences. There's so much beauty in the fact that I live in a town where, yeah, there is considerable things that are very different to like Nairobi. And that's also worth celebrating sometimes, that yeah, the German people are very different from the Kenyan people in some aspects, and it should be accepted, it should be fine. And I'm different living here. Maybe I have so much tension with that because there's always this integration thrown at me all the time. And it's like, yeah, but also me being Kenyan in this sense should also be celebrated. Me having an accent when I speak, me talking with my hands, like these differences are also worth noting and rejoicing about. Yeah.
Yeah, Sophia, I would like to ask you, when you see the images from Jordan and the images from Alma's film, which you know very well, where do you feel like, oh, they're talking about the same thing, or they're expressing the same thing, although the stories are totally different?
I think it's actually quite a beautiful pairing. Jordan, I didn't know your work before, and I think it's very beautiful in conjunction with Oma's work. And what I've been noticing is like in your film, if I'm not mistaken, we never leave the sky, right? There's always some form of sky in one of the layers. So I was wondering what that means in terms of your spatial, right? Neither here or there. We're always somehow up there as well. And then what you've been observing, maybe that's more of a question for you, Jordan, actually, about the temporal non-linearity, but there's spatial linearity, right? We move all the time. Like it's like we're in that one stream. And I think Oma's film has a similar idea of bridging spaces, but she does it through montage, right? So whereas here we have a more expanded, on Jordan's work here, we have a more expanded sense of how cinematic, I don't know, continuity, right, can spatially be created. Oma is really relying on montaging sequences and thereby creating that impression. And I also would love to hear more about your work with sound, Jordan. I found the soundscape to be very fascinating.
Okay, so with the movements, interesting you noted that the clip you see of the sky was me during the trip when I was in Kenya coming back. So that I recorded that skyscape coming back and landing into Frankfurt. And it's interesting because the name of the film is Mkokoteni, and Mkokoteni is Swahili for like this hand carts that people pull along. And that's how I feel my lineage, my kinship. I carry my meanness, whatever that will be, if I live here for the rest of my life or not, or these cultural influences, I will always take them along with me. And so when I travel, I think that's kind of what was connecting this idea of like the sky. It's always above me. My culture is my me, whatever that means, is always above me and is always moving with me. When it comes to the soundscape, what you hear is me quoting in 3 languages. So Swahili, and I do that a lot in my work. And again, it bridges these 3 cultures. So English, Swahili, and German, the 3 language I can speak. Well, with German, it's arguable, but yeah, the 3 languages I can semi-communicate with. And it's a quote from a Kenyan writer, Binyavanga Wainaina. And it says, and I really, really love this quote. It comes from every direction, shrapnel climbing up my arms, warm pools at the base of my stomach, a pulse of rising heat in my temples, the feeling of home. And I think like why I really like it is home is not always comfortable. Like there's this, we over sometimes idealize like home. And sometimes even when I go back to Kenya, I'm like, I remember all the things that nerve me about it. And then when I'm here, it's like all the things that nerve me about it. And I really like this idea of discomfort, of playing with it. And so, yeah, what you hear is also with the sound, I'm trying to kind of nerve you. I don't want you comfortable. The world isn't always comfortable, and the sitting in discomfort, sitting in not knowing where you belong or if you belong, like is fine. You kind of find your place somehow. And that's what I was playing with the sound, this eeriness, I think.
And can I add maybe, and Ziggy, you correct me if I'm wrong, what I find so interesting about the voiceover history of The Snake in My Bed, and that really speaks to what you're saying, is that Uma really wanted a German actress with a Nigerian accent to speak the voiceover, and they did not take the person she suggested. She wanted to have a dialect. And so, but Ziggy, you might know more about this. So.
Yeah, correct. My mother did have a person in mind, but due to circumstances in Germany, geopolitical circumstances more so, the Berlin Wall falling and the integration of East Germans back into West Germany, the priority was given to an East German actress to try and, yeah, get, you know, money that way, experience back this way. So yeah, that she wasn't too happy about it, but hey, again, it's who funds the film has the final say. Yeah.
Another aspect that I would like to ask all of you about is the aspect of, yeah, that the women are very strong. You know, Jordan, you said you have from your mother, you have like her voice in your ear and you're reading her things and so on. And so this film was made by your mother. There are these strong lines of women, and what I notice is that the men are sort of not really visible. Could you tell me how you feel about that?
I mean, we're visible in everyday life. It's actually refreshing seeing. So, men are visible in everyday life. It's really refreshing seeing the perspective of women because, I mean, hey, everyone has a unique and separate experience of everything. The Us as men we're more privileged to share our experiences in mainstream media. I mean, you see that in any movie you want to pull up and watch, who are the directors and producers, most of them are men. So we already have a very strong world purview from the men in our society. It's really refreshing seeing it from the other way around, seeing from my opinion, I think we need more of it because then, hey, we'll understand the other side as men as well. Hey, okay, I understand what she means now when she says that. I understand why I'm getting yelled at for what I'm doing because I see more of that in the media. So I actually really enjoy. It's actually really refreshing seeing the perspective told from a woman's point of view without needing the involvement of a man to kind of dilute it or make it more palatable to what we're all used to. If that, hope that answers that question.
I think for me, I don't think of men or women. Like I just make my art based on like my life. What's interesting, how we also have another similarity is my father was never in my life. Talk about another man not taking responsibility. And so my mom has always been my mother and like she was the parent in that sense. A lot of people ask me like, do I feel like I missed out? I'm like, no, like not at all. So yeah, it isn't intentional. Like I was not like intentionally like, oh, just my mom or just my like I don't know. I'm just called to them not because they're women, but because they're just amazing people. I think that's the thing for me. And yeah, also seeing how when you turn into these people, especially this mother-daughter relationships, how there's always like friction, and then next thing you know, oh, I'm turning into my mom, and then there's fear, and then there's pride in that. So I guess because I've been on that personal journey, I really do connect a lot of my work to like my mom, my grandma, because my mom is very much, she talks a lot about my grandma. I only knew her for a short while, but there are all these images I have of her. It's also seeing, it's interesting if you see images of like when I was young and you see images of my mom at the same age, look very similar. And now my mom is starting to look like my grandma. So this, again, I guess it's also connecting with like time. So yeah, they're just the humans who are around me, who I admire, who have influenced me. And that's, I guess, the reason why my work might lean more towards women. Yeah, I never think of men when I'm making my work, to be honest. I just think of people, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, in my life, I sort of noticed much later that all of these strong people were also women. I just, first I had strong people around me, and like my mom has a sister and I have 3 daughters. There's a lot of women in our family, but I understand what you mean. They're just first people, and then at a certain point you notice, oh, they're all women. I don't know, the kind of strength that you see, and especially when women start to come forward as artists, the kind of strength that you see coming from a feminine perspective is a different kind of strength, or it expresses itself very differently than masculine strength. Yeah, Sophie, did you choose to look at the feminine strength, or is that the things that interest you happen to be things that are done by women?
That's a very complicated question that happened to be done by women. Yeah, I do think for me it's a very unclear answer to the question still, if there is something like a feminine perspective, especially when we're talking about film. Because I do think there's been such a wide array of works made by women that don't all relate to each other, right? But what I found noticeable about the 2 films we saw today, or saw for today, is that Jordan's and Omar's work are so aware of the technical aspect of their medium, right? So a sequence that I didn't get to show in the background, and that's actually also part of African Woman, is at some point in the film, basically we get into a very abstract sequence where it basically looks like a kaleidoscopic view that in The Snake in My Bed has a very spiritual voiceover that's all about what Ziggy was hinting at, this connection through nature, right? Like everything is connected. And so in Jordan's film, obviously very differently, and not in maybe with a similar spiritual evocation or so, but much more technically, I would say, through the strong digital rendering of your images and the sound, there is this strong reflective level, I'm not sure that's the word I'm looking for right now, on perception. And I do think that's something I keep noticing throughout women's filmmaking, that there is a very strong awareness of a specific form of perception being brought to the film, right? Whatever that perception is might really vary from every filmmaker, but yeah. Does that somehow speak to your question, Elizabeth?
Yes. I'm sure that there are many layers that you could also talk about. Jordan, how is that for you? Do you?
Yeah. It's interesting when you started to talk about perception. I did think that somehow in women, you're kind of in tuned to be more perceptive. Like when you walk out your house, like you have to think twice. This world always feels like in some capacity it's against us somehow. So you're perception, your, I don't know what's the word, when you're like heightened perception of like everything. When you're a mother, like as compared to, and let's just facts are facts in a way, like you're more perceptive of your child. Your child is hungry. You need like this. We are in tune to be on another level of what's happening outside ourselves. And I've actually never thought about that. Like, yeah, I've never, I guess you know it, but I've never thought about it, and I've never thought about it in connection to my work. But if I think of a lot of what I do between like actually physically making whatever I'm making is perceiving a lot of things or questioning my perception of things. And it's like you're always all the time. Yeah, if that makes, if makes sense, but yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Another question that I have more or less for all of you is the question of rekinning. And like, so you were brought up in where?
Well, 8 years in Germany and then 30 something years in, yeah, 30 years in California. So,
Okay, so when you connect with your mother and you connect with the images that she has shown, do you feel that that already lives in you, or do you feel the necessity or the need or the desire to be where these images came from?
from my perspective, I mean, it's all a part of me. Just like every single, I mean, I watch this movie maybe once every 5, 10 years, and at each time I watch it, I notice new things. I learn new things. Messages that I heard earlier mean something else more with wisdom and experience. So for me, the images live inside of me. I mean, some of the imaging was shot in Munich. That's where I'm originally from. Other imaging was shot in in the Igbo states of Nigeria. I wouldn't really say Igbo state. Well, it's all part of colonialism, which is really annoying. But anyway, it is so those live inside of me. I can exude that through what I've learned. So from my family, what I've learned through my experiences, what I've learned through my German heritage and through my Nigerian heritage. But I mean, for me, part of that imaging is why I decided to move back to Germany, is because, hey, this I really connected with, and it's part of who I am. And for me, it's easier also to go with my experience level here, my career experience level here to Germany. But as from that perspective, I say, yeah, I live it in the sense that it's part of me, but I really don't seek it out, except the big to Germany. Sometimes I question it. I'm just playing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, what about you?
Well, so it's interesting. I have a two-part answer. When it comes to rekinning, I think the part I'm trying to rekin with is when I actually started living in the Western world, is how much it really hit me, my life in Nairobi, how westernized it was. Like it really, when people ask me certain questions, like, did you or do you? I'm like, yeah. And then anyway, I think then it got me really questioning this, how much I rejected, whether consciously or not. And I'll be specific, Luya culture, so that's my mom's tribe. And I never wanted to go to the village. You want to stay in Nairobi, how you want to dress, what you want to talk, how you want to speak, like all these things, what you're watching on TV. And really, I was brought up in a very westernized bubble. I went to British system schools and everything. I know more, and this is what is shocking. I know more about German history than I know about Kenyan history, even before I ever stepped here. Like, it blows my mind. And I think that's the part I'm really trying to reckon with, which is such a shame that I'm doing it here. So I remember when I was in Kenya, I came back with like a bunch of books by Kenyan African writers, because I also didn't want to buy them here. I wanted to buy them there. And that's what I'm doing. Every time I pick up a book that's not an art book, is by a Kenyan/African writer. And that's kind of my way of rekindling this connection. And also, like, arguing with my mom a lot and blaming her that I don't know my mother tongue because she didn't teach me. So that is also about responsibility on her part. And then there's also, because I've been here for just only 5 years, it isn't about rekindling, because I don't feel like I've broken my connection to Kenya as much as I can say like I'm westernized. I'm still Kenyan. Like there's still Kenyanness in me in every capacity that is, I guess, an evolved version of all these like cultures that came together, especially in Nairobi. I think what's important to me, and that what I try and consciously do every day, is not lose that. I don't want to lose how I speak. I don't want to lose how I think. Like I have a different way of how I think about things. And I guess that'll morph and change as I live here, or if I ever end up living anywhere else. But that Kenyanness, that Nairobi-ness, I really so much want to still hold on to it. Yeah, if that makes any sense. So there's that two part, not letting go and reconnecting with a part I never valued until I left. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, wonderful. Did you want to comment something, Sophie?
I'm just thinking that right, this idea is also very beautiful, that these generational lines between the art that we were seeing today are very different, but also connected, right? In a certain way, Ziggy, this film is like passed on to you by your mother, no? So you have images that you can go back to, and right, Jordan, that might be what your art becomes to people that you pass it on to, and then these things become themselves, no, objects of maybe forms of rekindling, or no, if we want to use that term for it. And I always find that quite beautiful when I hear Ziggy talk about the connection to the film, how it's like very much a public document. It circulates, other people see it, but it's also a film that is very directly, obviously, connected to his biography and his self-perception. Yeah, and I do think it's a very important thing that art can be. But now I'm generally like it sounds like a cliche when you say it out loud, but I do think it's a very powerful aspect of it.
Sometimes cliches are true.
Right? There's a reason they're cliches in the first place. Like, yeah. Can I add something about this idea of kinship through like the art? I think it is interesting. A lot of the images you see in the work are images from like my mom's life, and this connecting, yeah, I guess it plays again with how time is not so linear. And yeah, I guess I am using her images to connect with a part of my heritage that I didn't value before. It's also interesting to see, in a sense, also how my mom in like the 60s was westernized, and to see a version of Nairobi and Kenya that you don't see in the history books and stuff. And I love that connection, and seeing my mother in the images. And like I really, really love it.
Mhm. We have a question from the audience. And it is, let me read it out. What form of justice do you seek, if any, and how should it express itself? Justice is a big word.
From justice already from my mom's film perspective, if that question is directed at that, from my mom's film perspective, justice was carried out throughout that journey. I mean, before my case, German men would go on like business trips or go experience the world and make decisions that had lifelong effects, but they didn't need to be accountable for it. After not after this film, but after the, to put it nicely, hell my mom went through, Germans actively changed the law and said, well, no, now when you go and do that and you go have kids somewhere, those kids are going to be German and you're going to be paying child support. So it doesn't, you can't run away from it now. You after, I mean, I don't want to say, I don't know if I think I'm the landmark case here in Germany that caused that to happen. At least according to information I have. From the other side of it, I mean, justice, it had effects on me. It had effects on me. I mean, for a while there, I didn't know what to think of my father. But after a while, also growing and becoming wiser, understood why he made the decisions he made. I don't agree with them, but I understood the decisions he made. And I'm sure he was a good father to his kids he did have contact with. So I can't speak upon that. But as far as it relates to the film is also kind of telling, hey, it's all right to go through struggle, but you also have to fight. Because when you do fight, when you pick up a sword and fight back, things change. If you sit there and complain, nothing changes. If you complain, nothing at all will change, and the system is going to use you and abuse you. In Germany, in the United States, in Nigeria, in wherever, the system will chew you up and spit you out till you pull out that sword and fight back. So that's the whole thing, is don't sit there. Yeah, sometimes it's hard, but if you do something about it and you stop complaining and you do something about it, justice is served. Laws get built, changed. Everything gets built to make society better for people like me, for people like Sophie, for people like Jordan, for people like even Elizabeth and everyone else who is taking part in this conversation. It changes. You just have to take an active part in it.
Oh, well, thank you for that. It's very encouraging to hear you say this. Yeah, Jordan.
I 100% agree, but it's interesting for me, this fight, especially when you say it's like at some point you have to get up and fight. I think I'm at the stage with my work and also on a personal level. I'm looking at the internal fight first. Like being just to myself first before I go tell people I am worth respecting. I have to start respecting myself, and we somehow forget that that takes time. It takes time. It's painful. Like when if systems change, and it is never just, and it's also the same on a personal level. And it took me coming here and somehow also losing myself for a while, and then realizing it's a conscious thing. Every time you, oh, Ausland, oh, immigrants, like you at some point you start believing all the, I cannot curse, all the bad things that are constantly said, that are constantly repeated. Like you're internalizing it and just constantly hearing, oh, Auslanders come here, oh, Auslanders come, and then you lose yourself. Like this identity is like all you are. And then you just have to go through the journey of cleansing, of realizing, okay, yeah, I'm an Auslander. I don't come from here, but why is it like a slur? Why is this like slur attached to it? Like I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of the fact that I can see the world and I want to live in the world. You know, everywhere I travel a lot, and everywhere in the world you go, you will always find a German. You will always find a German. And there's this idea that Germans can be allowed to see the world, but we can't. And that we should be, oh, okay, thank you, I'm here. Anyway, and I'm going in a whole personal rant. But the point is, it comes from a place of realizing I belong first. Like I know I belong in this whole world, whether you want me to or not, before I can come to your face and be like, yeah, well, say to my face, like prove that I don't belong here, and then to be able to fight. So yeah. Completely agree, but the fight begins internally, is my long speech.
Thank you. Sophie, have you thoughts on justice?
I really do think that's a question for the filmmakers. I mean, obviously, I have my own thoughts about justice, and I do appreciate that Ziggy brought in the actual legal history that's connected to the film, because I do think it's a very strong case how these things can intersect, no? Documenting, so to speak, a fight that actually took place in court on film and making it public and circulating the story through it, and this call to arms, no? If we want to use military language. Yeah, but I'm still with what Jordan just said, so I don't think I'm going to be able to say more now. Yeah.
Okay. Then there was a question from an audience member, or Jordan. Why did you choose to go and now live in Germany? Did your mother ever live in Germany?
Oh, I moved for love. Okay. I'm married to a German, and that's how I ended up. We ended up in Germany, but we did live in Kenya for a while, and then, yeah. So that's how I'm here. My mother never lived in Germany, but she has visited, yeah, a couple of times. So that's how I ended up here. Love.
Yeah. Yeah, let me see. There.
Can I maybe ask a question to both of them?
Yes.
And that's a question that I was discussing with Ziggy beforehand, or not really discussing, but telling him that I was interested in asking it. But I really want to expand it to Jordan as well, because I'm always curious to hear what would you like to see happen with the film of your mother, Ziggy, in the future, and what would you like to see happen with your art and film in the future, Jordan?
I mean, from my perspective, I think it's very helpful. I would like it to be circulated to any audience that needs it, which is, I think, the whole world at this point, and with all the chaos we're seeing. But I think many people need to watch it because, hey, you get a perspective from everyone likes to say, oh, Africans are disadvantaged, this, that, and the other, but no, but Nigeria was a very strong country. We have oil. We were an oil-rich nation. Nigeria was a very strong country. Nigerian president went to the United States on the request of, who was it, Kennedy? It was a very, very strong country. And then at some point, the way was lost. And you have filmmakers like my mother, like Jordan, like many other people who want to have that excellence back and have that, hey, we're all on the same footing. So giving that tool, I guess, in my mom's film, giving that tool to a global audience, saying, okay, well, this person experienced the world this way. We can either agree that this is her experience, which it is. You can't fight what her experience is. Then we can learn from it. Hey, how do we become better? How do we reach across the pond, reach across the ocean, reach across even to our neighbor and say, let's be better. Let's do better. Let's be more kind to the people and more listen to what is going on. Yeah, not every voice is very pressing. I mean, but at other standpoints, hey, people are going through things that they need to express, and that they're expressing it because something needs to change. And it's not just them who are experiencing that, it's multiple people. It's just some are more privileged or more capable of putting that into a consumable format where people can agree and relate to. So from audience-wise, it's global. Yeah, it'll touch someone and someone will go, oh, that's a great idea. I'll fight. I'll take personal responsibility.
On my part, what do I don't know. Sometimes I try and avoid thinking what I want, what effect or what I want with my work, because somehow your ego starts getting inflated. I struggle with that. But with this film specifically, and that's why you can actually just see it on my website. I've also put it online. I wanted it open source. I just wanted it to be accessible. Because it really came from such a personal space, and I really just it was I was regurgitating this idea and this concept. I just feel all that matters to me in this film is for people to see it, especially Kenyans. What I do avoid, it's interesting, the first couple of years here, I did care about what the West, I want to show Germans that Kenyans are, or Africans are. I don't care if the rest of the world has the wrong perception of us. I don't care. It's their loss. For me, it's just completely ridiculous. It's so interesting. There's certain things about me that people will be that I guess society will see as a positive, but people are you're your work ethic, or you're always punctual, you Germany has affected you. I'm no, Kenyans are like that. This isn't a Western concept in any sense of the word. And I'm done convincing the West that we are of value. So I don't make my art in any way thinking of anyone from the West or anyone who needs to be convinced. Really, it is 2025. If you still think Africa is some backward place, well, that's your problem at this rate. It's not for us to convince you. So, yeah, I don't know if I've answered the question. Again, I've gone on a whole other rant. But my whole thing with my art, or this film in particular, I just wanted it out in the world. Whoever can relate with it, and especially whoever is in a different culture, whoever is who has this mix, even if it's different culture, you moved from Frankfurt to Cologne or Nairobi to Mombasa, whatever it is, we ignore sometimes this idea of, a few kilometers creates a whole other bubble and a whole other world. And I was creating this film to just connect with anyone who looks around and is like, do I belong? Do I care if I belong? I'm fine being me. And just kind of maneuvering in this world with their baggage. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for a last question. The last question, this is specifically about the snake in my bed, and I will read the question because I need to get it right. In the version of The Snake in My Bed that aired on German television's most watched broadcaster, presumably around midnight, did Oma Diego seek to use her own voice in English or Igbo with German subtitles? Or did she wish to say the text aloud in German instead of the voiceover by German actor Anna Schut? What were the objections of Das kleine Fernsehspiel? The decision seems incongruous to other aspects of the film, or was it? That's the last question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, ZDF did play it late at night. Um, from the aspect, my mom already had a voice actress lined up. ZDF, or the financiers chose to I guess didn't deny that request, and they had their own actress that they put in there. It's almost like during filming, my mom also had different staff available. I'm not trying to make it a West German versus East German thing, but a lot of East Germans were looking to be integrated at the time period. And how do you integrate East Germans back into West Germans? You put them into things. Even if they don't have the correct qualifications, you stick them in there. And while I don't discount the work that the German voiceover actress did, but when I watched the English version and I watched the German version, it just feels completely different. The messaging is also different. It's the German version is more callous, careless, I'd say. More like, okay, I'm reading these parts, I'm doing my best reading these parts, but I can't really express the viewpoints of the writer or the filmmaker in this aspect. My mom did have someone who was able to do that, but again, that request was denied. What effects it has, I mean, listening to both, actually, I've listened to the English one most of my life, but finally listening to the German one at Das kleine Fernsehspiel in Berlin in 2023, that's the immediate feeling I had. I'm like, oh, this just is missing something. So I do recommend listening to the English one because you get more feeling and you get more soul and passion behind it. But yeah, why it was decided so is why any corporation decides something. They just look for the most inclusive, efficient route.
Quickly before you close, could you please give us the name of the legal case, Siegfried? And also, there's a question if your mother ever lived in Germany and spent time there after the film.
That I'd have to how to follow up on
Yeah.
that. I'd have to get the name from my mother. And yes, my mom obviously lived the first 8 years of my life here. And
Okay.
yeah, so
Well,
that,
if you could email me when you find out the name of the legal case, we'd be grateful.
of course, yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
And can I just quickly chime in on the kleines Fernsehspiel aspect? I am assuming, I'm not a good enough historian of that specific program and ZDF, that they dubbed everything. I do not believe they were broadcasting subtitled films at the time. It would just be my assumption. I would need to look into it. But so I think it was just the standard procedure that they needed to dub it, right? And then that was obviously what Ziggy was describing, the conflict around who was going to get to do the dubbing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, well, we seem to be out of time, which is unfortunate. It's been wonderful hearing your perspectives. It's been wonderful seeing your art, Jordan. It's been wonderful seeing a small taste of the film, but we are all able to see it with a link. It's going to be available till tomorrow.
Monday.
Till Monday. I thought I was thinking today was Sunday. It's going to be available till Monday, so everybody still has time to see it. thank you so much for being so open and sharing what you think and feel. As I said, once again, it was lovely seeing all of these things, and I'm always so touched and so impressed by the creativity of the within the Black German community. So you have made me very happy. And yeah, thanks a lot. And I guess we'll see you or more of your work sometime in the future.
Thank you, Elizabeth.